Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to the videos of the paid request. It's time for Douglas. Thank you so much for that. If anyone's interested in requesting any type of videos, PayPal is usually the best bet, or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. And this is for the 1991 sports comedy Necessary Roughness. This is a film I saw back in the day, and kind of how I felt back then is how I felt now, where it was a silly enough, fun enough movie. You know, it's not, for me, an unsung gem or this incredibly underrated film, but it's fun for what it needed to be. Think of Major League, but instead of baseball, it's football. It's kind of what it is, because you have a team that goes through some things where a lot of the former team and players are gone. So you gotta hire pretty much a whole new roster. And so you have these folks that have to learn how to work together, and they have their unique traits or personalities. And then they start losing games, of course, at first, and then they finally start to bond, work together. They start winning games. They start winning the hearts of fans. The announcer becomes more and more in their corner. You have the antagonist, who's usually the owner of the team. Same thing here, who doesn't believe in the team. You have one of your characters have a bit of a love story. In Major League, it was Tom Berenger. Here, it's Scott Bakula. So it's not original. It's not something you haven't seen before. But like I said, it's affable enough. It's likable enough of quality that it's easy to watch. The football scenes are shot in a capable manner. And I think for me, just the cast. Just growing up in this era, I recognize a lot of these people. I mean, Scott Bakula is our star. Loved him in the TV show Quantum Leap. Enjoyed him in films like Lord of Illusions. Not a whole lot of films in this era that he got to star in. I think he was in Major League 3, Lord of Illusions. Not a whole lot of other films he got to star in. But again, he has a affable, likable quality. You have Sinbad, which I know recently he was dealing with some pretty bad health issues. I hope he's getting better. He was a stand-up comedian at the time, had a few shows. You know, was in a couple films. I didn't see House Guest or First Kid, but I heard about them. I liked him in Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So Sinbad's in the film. A very young Jason Bateman, who would go on to be in the TV show Arrested Development. He was in films like Game Night and what was the other films? That one with Melissa McCarthy, I forgot the name of it. I liked him in it, not so much Melissa. He did a film with Ryan Reynolds called The Change Up. Just Horrible Bosses. That was a pretty good movie. Sequel, not so much. But yeah, very young Jason Bateman. You have Héctor Elizondo from Leviathan and Beverly Hills Cop 3. He's the head coach. You got Robert Loggia from Independence Day, Stallone's Over the Top film. He's the defensive coach. You also have a couple people that will later be in the 1994 Street Fighter film. You have Andrew Bernarski, who was Zangief in that. Also would be the 2003 Leatherface Texas Chainsaw Massacre film. He would play Leatherface. You also have the guy who played E. Honda in the 90s Street Fighter film. Rob Schneider is the announcer. And thankfully, he's not that annoying. I think because he plays the character fairly straightforward. In fact, this is the first... I know it's been used before, but this is the first I ever heard of the term Fumble Yaya, Fumble Roosty. Kathy Ireland is in the film. So a lot of recognizable people, at least from my era. The direction is from Stan Dragoti, who did the Michael Keaton film Mr. Mom. Now, sadly, he did pass away in 2018. So rest in peace to him. Bill Conti did the musical score. It's not one of his best scores. It's not up there with the Rocky films, or I think he worked on Karate Kid, or Lock Up with Stallone. But it works for what it needs to be. It's a fun enough story, just not up there with his highlights, in my opinion. The plot of the film, the Texas State Armadillos, they had a lot of infractions, so people were paid off, or their grades, even though they weren't good, they still were allowed to play. Because of all these infractions, they've been very embarrassed. A lot of people have been fired. There a lot of discourse around the team. So they try to start anew. Héctor Elizondo is hired as a new coach. He hires his buddy Robert Loggia to do the defensive part of it. And they start getting players. So you have Scott Bakula. He becomes a quarterback. He's an aging guy. They play off a lot of his age. He was a guy that could have made it, but his father died, so he took over the farm. But the first time you see him, he's in a field. He's got these kind of scarecrow things with football pads on that he trains on, throwing passes to them. You have Sinbad, who is a professor. I forgot how little Sinbad was in the film, because he doesn't pop up till like 30 minutes in. And then he appears, sporadically, in and out. Like I said, I thought he was in this a lot more than I remember. But when he's there, he has this good-natured quality to him, which I think made him endearing. Kathy Ireland comes in later. She's a soccer player, but they realize she's a good kicker, so she's going to do the field goals. And yeah, I forget the actor's name, but E. Honda. He's a guy who's a tackle blocker. Helps Scott Bakula out a few times. He's also very defensive and helping Kathy Ireland because he got a crush on her. Jason Bateman is the son of a rich guy. He doesn't have a whole lot to do, except later on where there's a subplot where he's ready to leave and Scott Bakula helps him with his grades. I mean, on one end, it doesn't showcase a lot of Jason Bateman's comedic talents that we see later on in films like Horrible Bosses. So it's one of those, it's nice to see him in there in a kind of a very early, young role. But like I said, it doesn't really give him much to do comedic-wise. But it's still fun to see him in there. Andrew Bernarski, he's a dick in real life. He's an idiot in real life. He's a guy that would give his own phone number out because he didn't realize what the hell he was doing when he was doing some, I don't know, Instagram, TikTok, whatever video, and he literally gave out his phone number. The reason I say he's a dick because I remember he was kind of, when Gunnar Hansen passed away, I'm the best of the face ever. He's an idiot. Thank God he's not in this film too much. Like I said, Rob Schneider as the announcer, maybe because he's not playing this over-the-top role and with his voice, because his role is fairly, like I said, straightforward as an announcer, he actually had some funny lines. Like there's a guy who on the team whose name's Samurai, because he's this white guy who likes to be in touch with the arts and will do some martial arts once in a while on players. So there's a game where he does some kits and stuff, and the ref calls it, and without missing a beat, Rob Schneider goes, "Oh, come on, ref. It was a clean kit to the face mask." And just for how nonchalant he said that kind of made it funnier to me. And then that scene where the ref's trying to explain what the guy did, he just gives up like, shit, never mind. Yeah, it's just, let's go on with it. So there are a couple moments that did make me chuckle. It wasn't the most hilarious film, but it's one of those that, maybe a couple of smirks. And like I said, it's the cast, the performances, I think that made it entertaining enough. Robert Loggia, I thought, worked well. I thought he worked a lot better here than Héctor Elizondo. That's one guy. Like, Robert Loggia is the crusty coach, and then there's a bit where it's like the big game, it's halftime, they're losing, and Robert's like yelling, screaming, and it's like, let's pray. kind of that change up. I thought Loggia did that fairly well. But Héctor Elizondo, I get what he's trying to do because he's a good head coach, but he's also the wet blanket of the group. But just his vibe, his speech pattern, he just did not seem to fit in this, at least in my opinion. He just felt like he didn't I mean, maybe that's the point, of course, but he just didn't feel like he belonged. He wasn't funny, he wasn't entertaining. He just felt like he just didn't belong in this movie. I don't know, like everyone else was like on the same page except him. I don't know how else to describe it. Just the way he gave his performance, again, the way he delivered his dialogue. I would say of all the characters, he's the one I was the least interested in. And there's a bit where he's in the hospital and it's just Robert Loggia dealing with the team. I actually think Robert Loggia was more memorable. Like when the players are doing better than he expected and he's like, oh, it works for me, and hey, whatever you want, Andre, as long as you hit like that. Maybe see, like Robert Loggia just seems like more the type of guy, type of actor, type of coach that would work in this comedic field. That's the thing. Like all these guys kind of felt right in being in this comedy, except Héctor Elizondo. It felt like he was from a different movie. Like he was from Hoosiers or much more dramatic film. So he kind of, not only was he a wet blanket to the characters, he's kind of a wet blanket to the movie. Like none of his scenes I found funny or entertaining, and it just, I don't know. I wasn't big on him. I think maybe it was just I don't know if it was the way his character was written or just miscasting. So that's just me though. So without the film, they realize they have to play Iron Man football because they don't have enough players, so they got to play offense and defense. Larry Miller is the dean. He's the guy trying to shut the team down, kind of like the owner in Major League. But Larry Miller, you've definitely seen him. He was in the Nutty Professor films. He was the guy that, what was it, the second film, the giant gerbil that violated him? So Larry Miller. Maybe at times he plays as a bit too cartoonish, but I don't know. Because of it was that actor, I kind of fit with him and his personality. There's a bit where convict players are brought in to try to test the team. But I wish it was a bit of a longer scene. It's there long enough for us to see who these players are, which is like Dick Butkus, Jerry Rice, Randy White, I believe, Evander Holyfield. And then they take them down, beat them up a bit, and then the guards stop them, and then it's time to go. And I thought that was a bit of a shame, because I think there's a more you could have done with that. Like maybe Evander do a couple games, but then like Evander Holyfield like does his boxing moves and punches someone down, or maybe punches someone and stay down, bitch. Or Jerry Rice gets the ball and he outmaneuvers everybody and outmaneuvers everything, and he pulls off his helmet and he says something. Or Dick Butkus, yeah. It felt like there's a lot more you could have done with that. I do like how nice and polite Dick Butkus is before the beating. Like, that was funny. But I think that scene could have been a lot longer. I think there's a lot more material you could have got out of that. Of course, like in these movies, there's got to be a bar fight with an opposing team, and there is. I did like Jason Bateman where the guy punches Scott Bakula, and then Jason Bateman comes out and goes, "Hey, he bought you a beer." Like, just be so, like, sincere, like, Why'd you do that, man? He bought you a beer. And then he gets punched. But again, it's like a lot of these movies. It has the typical tropes, the cliches. It's predictable. You know where it's going. Scott Bakula's in love with the teacher, and it's the same lady. She was in... I think she was in Arachnophobia as Jeff Daniels' wife. I believe it was Harley Jane Kozak, I believe is her name. I think it was her. So it was nice to see her in there. And then you have the big game. They're losing, but then they get back and they win. Like I said, the football scenes are capable enough, filmed well enough that you can see what's going on. The directing has some nice, and the editor some nice choices. Like Scott Bakula focuses on a player, and it edits into when you throw to the scarecrow things at the beginning of the film. And so you see his mind imagining that as he focuses and throws the ball. It's not using over-the-top shaky camera or everything, so you don't get confused by the environment, by the geography. You're not confused as to what the hell's going on. It doesn't go for a lot of lowbrow jokes. Like, it doesn't go for a lot of like piss jokes, fart jokes, or anything of the sort, which I was glad for. Granted, I kind of wish this film was R-rated. I kind of wish this film... They went a bit of the extra mile for the R rating, just in terms of language, cursing, things of that nature. I think that maybe could have made it a little bit funnier, a little bit of rougher in this necessary roughness. I wish Sinbad was in the film a bit more, or he came in a bit earlier into the film. But like I said, it's a goofy, fun enough time waster that's not going to make you mad or anything, that you don't get a couple chuckles out of. And if you're like me and you lived in this era and you recognize a lot of these people, as I see all these people on one team and one group, and the underdogs, you root for the underdogs, and they're able to get the win, and you have that little feel-good moment and celebration at the end. And Bill Conti's music works for what it needs to in those things. Like I say, it's not up to par Rocky or the other scores, but definitely more than serviceable. Overall, I had fun watching this again. It had been a long time. I do remember seeing this when I was a kid, and it brought back a couple of fond memories. So, may not be the most memorable film, may not be the best in the genre, but I mean, it's definitely better than Major League 2. It's definitely better than some of the other ones. So, I would still put Major League 1 above it. I would still put films like White Man Can't Jump above it. But it's still fun. Still a fun movie. So with that said, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.